Hi guys, my name is Ali. I'm the founder of Hanali, a management consulting company where we focus on helping build and fix sales teams. So in my last video, we actually talked about something called BANT, which stands for Budget, Authority, Need, and Timeline. In today's video, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the concept of budget and why it's so important to find it out as early as possible, how to figure out the range of your customer, your prospect's budget, and really how to use that information to really accelerate your sales process. So before we start, I think the most important thing that I have to say is it is kind of surprising how when we talk to clients or prospects that we consult with, how late in the game they are in the sales process with a customer or conversations with a customer where they're probably in like the third or fourth meeting and it's still not clear how much this prospect has to spend on your product or your service. And so the whole issue with that is you don't know if you're wasting your time. You may have given a lot of time and effort into explaining what your product and service does. You may have spent a lot of time scoping out with this prospect what the project would look like. And you're doing that without actually knowing whether they're going to even be able to afford your services or your product. And so one of the things I would say is the reason why budget comes at the front of the word BANT or the acronym BANT is because you need to find out budget as soon as possible, as early as possible in your sales conversations. So I think all customers and prospects, and if you think about stepping into the shoes of when you've bought something like a car or when you've gone in and bought something where you're negotiating like a house, the real estate agent or the car dealer or the car salesman always asks you how much money you're looking to spend. And it's an indirect way of asking what your budget is. And if you're a savvy customer or if you're dealing with a savvy prospect, they're almost always either going to lie, embellish, or understate their budget because they know if they say their budget is $10,000 and you're already as a salesperson assuming it's probably a little bit more than $10,000, you're going to oversell them on something. And so, I think you have to be a little bit more wise in terms of how you ask that question and a little bit more subtle in terms of how you ask that question. In certain scenarios where you're dealing with vendor managers or procurement managers, they're actually going to just deny and basically say, we're actually not allowed to tell you the budget. And so it may seem a little bit amateurish if you ask that question straight up. And so I think the way to actually overcome or actually get ahead of an objection around pricing is to pre-frame and anchor. So what I mean by pre-frame is to say, when you're having a conversation with the customer, don't wait for them to bring up price because probably I'd say 99% of the time at the end of a conversation or when a prospect's really interested in what you're offering as a sale in terms of a product or a service, they're going to ask you the ultimate question, which is how much it costs. And so the way to get ahead of that and pre-frame it is to basically give them a range. So the way I like to do is to say, so-and-so, we work with a number of clients, maybe offering this type of service where we're consulting. And typically our engagements are, let's say 3 months to start and in the price range of somewhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a month upwards. And it depends really on the scope of your project or what you're looking to do. Now, obviously, two things come across. $10,000 to $15,000 is quite expensive, but that's what typically we deal with as a customer, meaning myself as a vendor or a person offering this service. And I'm saying it actually can cost you more because it really depends on what you're looking for in terms of a project. Now, I've anchored myself there in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. If I wanted to, what I could have said is, it's in the range of $10,000 to $15,000. It could be higher or lower depending on your services. So when kind of giving a signal to the prospect is, it can go a little bit lower, but it really, again, depends on what you're looking to do. So pre-framing is a really, really easy tactic in terms of how to flesh out and see the reaction of your prospect. If, for example, I'm dealing with someone that's expensive, they're probably going to step on it and say something like, oh, that sounds a little bit on my range. Could you do something differently? Or they're just going to outright say that's too expensive. So right away, probably in the first call, want to kind of going through my presentation and qualifying with the customer, I've already figured out, is this person serious or not? And do they have the money? I think one thing to recognize is if there's silence on the other end, it could be interpreted in two ways. If you, for example, you say at $10,000 to $15,000 and they don't really react and they start to talk about what your process is, as if you're offering a consulting service or the features of the product, how you can tailor it, it's a pretty good indication that the price is not that much of an issue. However, if they're silent, meaning like it's drop pin silent at the end of the conversation, you may want to ask them, does that sound okay? Is that in your range? And then they're going to give you a little bit of indication. So silence can be interpreted in two ways when it comes to that. aspect of figuring out budget and pre-framing. I think the other thing too is you're also anchoring with that range, right? So I'm saying it starts at, I'm not saying it is that price, because at the same time, there is this thing in sales, specifically with salespeople, that they hate giving a price when it's so early in the process of a conversation on the first call, and they don't really know what you're looking for. As they get more confident in terms of figuring out who you are, what your authority is as a customer or a prospect, what you're actually looking for and the problem that you can solve, they get a little bit more comfortable in terms of giving you or floating a price. The thing is, though, when you are selling something, you have to recognize that the customer is also looking for pieces of information. So if they ask you for price, don't say you can't give it to them like outright. Just basically say you need a little bit more information if you don't feel comfortable giving them a range or anchoring the price. Give the customer or the prospect what they want. If, for example, you're elusive around the price, it's going to make them highly suspicious. Now, the whole idea is once you get an understanding of what their reaction is, you know that the customer is serious. If they're price shopping, they're basically gonna, they're gonna ask you questions like, "Hey, how much cheaper can you go?" Or your customer's looking, your customer's looking at another vendor. They might say, "Oh, this sounds a little bit expensive," or I've asked around on the market, and you guys are in a different range. So that person is price shopping. The reason it's important to find out if a customer or prospect is price shopping is to understand of how serious they are. If they are price hunting, that could mean a couple of things. It could mean that there's a need there, or it could be these guys are trying to, I guess, shop at the lowest bottom of the barrel, looking for the lowest deal. That's a red flag usually, because you don't want to deal with a customer that's looking for the cheapest price. They're going to probably be the most demanding. But the other thing though is if they are price hunting, it also could mean that they're acting under a timeline. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but that means there's a sense of urgency in the price, in the sales process. The last thing I would say is in terms of trying to acquire information about a customer's budget, you need to get very comfortable as a salesperson or a person who's selling to a customer to talk about money. I think the biggest issue we have when we're dealing with our clients is usually it's the CEO or a founder or someone who's not really comfortable approaching money with the client. They're more concerned about satisfying the client's need or solving their problem. And so they just fail to bring out pricing. And I think that's the biggest mistake you can make, because you can help a customer and a prospect all you want, but at the end of the day, are you going to get anything out of it if you don't figure out a way for them to deal with you in a transaction and pay you money for what you're offering? So do not wait in the sales process to talk about money. I think you should broach it as quickly as possible. It actually also establishes a lot of trust with a client or a potential client, because they actually understand that you're looking to engage with them in some sort of transaction and to help them in an engagement. And so the sooner you bring it up, the better it is going to be for you. So in our next video, we're going to talk about authority. There's going to be a couple of videos after this about need and timeline, but if you have any questions, shoot me an email. I'll leave my email and my Twitter handle in the notes, but happy to talk more if you guys have any more questions. Till the next time, guys, see ya.